It's a bit crazy to say that coffee funds terrorism. So I spent 2 weeks trying to find the perfect bag, ethically sourced, no violence, clean supply chain, and guess what? I found it. Nah, I'm joking. I didn't find because here's what nobody tells you. The labels you're reading, Fair Trade, Rainforest Alliance, Direct Trade, none of them checking if your coffee funded a guy with an AK-47 at a checkpoint in Congo. They just don't ask. And what I found trying to avoid conflict coffee is so much worse than your favorite Starbucks funding ISIS, is that nobody actually knows if it does, including the people selling it to you. This is that story. Let's start with the worst case scenario. Eastern Congo. There's a group called Allied Democratic Forces. In 2019, their leader pledged alliance to ISIS. The US now calls them ISIS DRC. In 2024, they killed over 1,300 civilians. In September 2025, they massacred 70 people at a funeral. Not a military target, a funeral. And they fund this violence through gold, timber, cocoa, and guess what else? Coffee. And here's where it gets crazy. To transport coffee from Eastern Congo to market, you have to pass through 798 armed checkpoints. Not a typo, 798. Imagine that you're a farmer. You harvested coffee beans, you want to sell them in a city, you have to drive through 798 different stops where guys with AK-47s ask for money. That's not a supply chain, that's a gauntlet with a UPC code. By the time your beans reach Goma, the price has doubled. Not because of shipping costs or fair wages, because of extortion at 798 consecutive armed robberies. And here's the kicker. Experts estimate more coffee is smuggled out of Eastern Congo to Uganda than Rwanda than it's legally exported. Think about that math. More coffee leaves illegally than legally. How is that even possible? Because the smugglers use planes that fly arms in and coffee out on the same flight. Yeah, you heard that right. The same aircraft delivering weapons to rebel lands loads up coffee and flies it to Uganda. It's like a war crime frequent flyer program. Now let's talk Yemen, because this is where the whole coffee fund terrorism thing falls apart. About 90% of Yemen's coffee comes from the northern highlands. Those highlands are controlled by the Houthis, who were redesignated as a foreign terrorist organization in March 2025. So technically, buying Yemeni coffee supports terrorists, right? Let's check the numbers. Yemen's entire coffee industry exports about 20 million per year. The Houthis pull in between 1.8 and 2 billion annually. Coffee represents roughly 1% of their revenue, maybe less. For context, in just 7 months of 2022, the Houthis made 453 million from fuel customs alone. That's 23 times their annual coffee income in half a year. Coffee is their side hustle, basically. And the farmers, they're not terrorists, they're hostages. They get paid in devaluating currency, they face extortion at checkpoints, they have no choice but to sell in Houthi-controlled markets because that's where they freaking live. One coffee entrepreneur put it perfectly. Purchases could technically be categorized as supporting terrorism because it could trickle back down. That's the whole game. Could technically trickle. Your taxes could technically fund drone strikes. Your Netflix subscription could technically fund whatever war crimes Hollywood executives commit on the weekends. When everything is indirect, nothing is direct. And that's the point. Okay, so our groups tax coffee in conflict zones, right? How does that coffee end up at a Starbucks or Walmart? Simple. Nobody can track where the coffee comes from. Here's what the laundering process looks like. Step 1. Congolese coffee gets smuggled into Uganda. Step 2. It gets mixed with Ugandan beans. Step 3. Someone forges a certificate of origin. And step 4. Boom, it's now Ugandan coffee. Then it passes through up to 10 different intermediaries. Each one adds another layer of who the knows where this coffee is coming from. The European Coffee Federation admits that 50% of European coffee imports have poor traceability. Half of all the coffee coming into Europe passes through so many middlemen that origin is basically a trust fall at that point. And then there's my favorite term I learned: ghost farms. Ghost farms are fake coffee farms that exist on paper but don't actually grow anything. They're shell companies for coffee, pretty much. They let conflict coffee enter certified supply chains. So your fair trade bag that you pay $17 for could contain beans that pass through 3 armed checkpoints and a ghost farm in Rwanda. That certification doesn't check for that. Fair trade certifies labor practices and environmental standards. It does not certify whether your coffee is funding a militia or a terrorist group. Rainforest Alliance, same deal. Unlike conflict minerals, which have actual regulations thanks to Dodd-Frank, coffee has no equivalent framework. You know what has better supply chain transparency than coffee? Freaking diamonds. Blood diamonds got the Kimberley process. Conflict minerals got Dodd-Frank Section 1502, and coffee just got pipes and a bird logo. Now let's clear the air and kill some myths before we go further. Myth number 1, FARC funded operations through coffee. Wrong. FARC made $300 million per year from cocaine, 65% of their total funding. They operated in coca regions, not coffee regions. Zero credible evidence of FARC coffee trade. The confusion exists because Colombia grows both. That's it. That's the whole conspiracy. Myth number 2, we know how much conflict coffee exists globally. We don't. There is no global estimate. Nobody's tracking it. Unlike conflict minerals, which are regulated and monitored, coffee is the Wild West. Myth number 3, buying Congolese coffee directly funds terrorist attacks. That's also wrong. It indirectly funds taxation in terrorist armed groups' control. If you buy Congolese coffee, you're not writing a check to ISIS DRC. You're buying from a farmer who got extorted. The terrorist groups get to cut, but so do 797 other armed checkpoints. Is that funding terrorism? Technically, sort of, maybe. In the same way your taxes fund the Pentagon, which funds drone strikes in the Caribbean, which kill civilians, apparently. I don't know how true that is. It's indirect through systems you don't control, that you cannot see. And here's the most uncomfortable part. Even companies trying to do the right thing cannot avoid this. Nespresso has a program called Reviving Origins that sources from Eastern DRC. They work with conflict impact assessors. They acknowledge they're operating under a degree of risk, which is pretty much translates to, yeah, we know armed groups might tax this somewhere, but if we stop buying, the farmers starve, and we look like assholes. There's no winning move, just less bad options. So I'm back at Whole Foods, staring at that $17 bag. And here's what I learned. The problem is not that coffee funds terrorism. Gold, timber, and fuel make way more money for armed groups. The problem is nobody actually tracks coffee. Nobody cares. 798 checkpoints, 10 intermediaries, ghost farms, 50% of European imports with zero traceability. The Allied Democratic Forces killed 1,300 people in 2024. Coffee's on the revenue list somewhere in some amount, and nobody can quantify it. I talked to a roaster whose sources from Congo ask how he knows his beans don't fund violence, and he say, I work with farmers I trust. I do my best. That's the system. Your 17 fair trade bag certifies the farm, the cooperative, the labor practices. What's not certified, the 47 armed checkpoints between the farm and the port, the ghost farms in Rwanda, the plane that flew weapons in and coffee out, none of that is on the label. So does your coffee fund terrorism? Maybe indirectly, through extortion somewhere in the chain. But here's the truth. We decided not to know. We tracked iPhones through 17 countries. Diamonds from mine to the store. We know which gold your sweater came from. We could track coffee, but we chose not to. Because if we did, we'll have to stop buying some of it. Farmers will starve, and we'll feel bad about it. So instead, we build certifications that sound ethical but don't check the boxes that matter. The coffee terrorism connection is real. It's just not organized pipelines. It's chaos, checkpoints, ghost farms, and at the end, a bird logo that says fair trade. So next time someone says Starbucks fund terrorism, tell them maybe through taxation and checkpoints. But we cannot verify because certifications don't check for that, and they'll probably stop inviting you to places, but at least you'll be right.